All right. Okay, let's move into this very last section, reconciliation and compliance. So reconciliation is something that should be done on a weekly, if not monthly or per term basis, but definitely on a regular basis so that when you come to year end, it is not this massive job. So reconciliation is basically ensuring checks and balances between all the entities involved. CSAC informs this process by sending you reports or giving you access to reports, but your financial aid office, your registrar, and your business office may all be involved. They might all have different access to these reports, but collectively we want to come together and make sure that the checks and balances are in place and that payments have been accurately reported. And of course, our auditors will verify all of the transactions and various payments that have been reported throughout the school year by having you pull samples of various student types. And we'll talk about that. So your reconciliation timeline throughout the school year looks something like this. The bulk of that year is your payment period, meaning that the rosters are fully open. You can make payments and adjustments as needed. And then as we're getting ready to close out the rosters and close out our books for the school year, right? The school year technically ends on June 30th. We're going to let the schools know that, hey, this is your last chance to make any final edits to previously reported payments. At this point, you would not be able to report new payments because the school year has actually ended, but you can fix or correct and adjust anything that was previously reported incorrectly. And then we send announcements all along these steps too. We say, hey, schools, we're getting ready to go into year-end reconciliation. Here's our timeline. Here's the final reconciliation deadline. And we will announce a specific date every year through our listserv. It will be at some point in September, usually the first or second week. And that's where we hard cut off at 5 p.m. any rosters for any last minute adjustments. And nothing more can be done after that. And then a month later is when we're going to start invoicing if you have remaining Cal Grant funds that were unused, meaning you've got students, you had more funds than you had students that needed those funds, or students have lost their Cal Grant awards because they've lost their eligibility. You might be left with some remaining Cal Grant funds. So those need to be returned. And so we're going to send those invoices to the schools, letting you know the deadline to return those excess funds. And if we don't get those excess funds back within 30 days, we'll start sending penalty letters to the campuses. So this is, in a nutshell, what we're going to do. We first want to ensure that the payments match the enrollment status, right? So if it's full-time enrolled, that student received a full-time payment. 3/4 time enrolled, the student got a 3/4 time payment. And then taking into account all of those funds advances, whether they're in advance funds or supplemental funds that are received after the advance funds have been exhausted. And that's done through the monthly payment activity report. And then verifying the accuracy of the actual disbursements. So not only did you report their payments correctly based on the enrollment status, you actually paid out the correct dollar amount. And then, of course, returning any remaining funds when you receive that notification or that invoice from CSAC. So when you, excuse me, I'm going to cough for a moment. Okay, so just a few reminders. As we're reporting our payments and web grants, we want to also adjust payments as needed, right? Full-time, 3/4 time, half-time. We want to pay the student according to their enrollment status. Being sure to adjust any awards down if that student has withdrawn or they've dropped units, right? Adrian talked about payments around census or your freeze date. Or if your student has withdrawn completely, right, they might have a return to Title IV for their Pell Grant, and so that might also require adjusting their Cal Grant award. And then really paying attention to limited eligibility situations. This is particularly important as a student is approaching graduation or they're exhausting all of their Cal Grant eligibility. So they might, be renewed in the following term with just 57% eligibility. So that's not going to pay for both terms at full time. So you might need to do a hand calculation in those situations. So accounting for funds received, checking with your business office if you in the financial aid office don't have access to those reports, right? Which is going to be found on that monthly payment activity report. By the way, I didn't mention this earlier, but the title of this report is monthly, when in fact it's actually a weekly report. I don't know why we don't change the name, but FYI. And then if you do have any questions about your EFT payments, reach out to us at this email address. Supplemental payments occur after you've exhausted your advanced funds. So we looked at this example earlier that funds advance, and then you end up using all of those advanced funds, and which will take that Cal Grant balance into a negative. And so our state controller's office will automatically kick in that same exact dollar amount to keep your balance at a zero. And it will do this throughout the school year after those advanced funds are exhausted. So verifying your disbursements, again, making sure that we paid the student accurately, not only based on their enrollment status, but just the correct dollar amount. So you're going to have your own school ledgers to compare this information against, right? Utilizing that accept reject report to confirm which of your transactions are reconciled. Because when you first report a payment on the roster before weekend processing, those are going to be accepted payments or accepted adjustments, but they're not yet reconciled until after that weekend processing. So come Monday is when you have that clean roster again. And then you're going to end up utilizing these two reports, the reconciliation summary and the reconciliation detailed data report, to look at the overall balances for Cal Grant A, Cal Grant B, Cal Grant C as applicable. And then you're going to go back through and then drill down to student level detail so that if there is a discrepancy, you know which student or students were mispaid or misreported, and then we can fix those. So the final reconciliation deadline, as I mentioned, is in September of every year. The exact date will be announced through our listserv. And then you want to make sure that you're paying attention to all those listservs that come along, because we got to make sure that we meet those deadlines, right? Especially if you need to make any adjustments and corrections, you want to do it before we close that functionality out. And when you are returning any excess funds, if you have any excess funds at the end of the year, know that they do need to be returned to the commission. They can't be rolled over into the next school year. They can't be applied to another student. They have to be returned. Again, we send those invoices in 30 days, letting you know that the payments are due within 30 days after you receive the invoice. Now, when you do need to return any excess funds, you would want to include all of this data on there. The CSEC ID number, remember I said that if you have a discrepancy in your reconciliation, you're going to drill down to student level detail. And so this is where you're going to capture that information. And then you're going to send that here. And then we're going to apply the payment, and everything should reconcile as it should. So when your campus is selected for a review or an audit, it will look something like this flow chart. So one of our auditors will make initial contact, usually with the financial aid director, and maybe a couple of other individuals that are involved in the process, saying, hey, CSAC would like to set up an audit. You've come up for an audit. And so they'll suggest a date. Once the date is agreed upon, that will be formalized, and we will send a letter saying, to all the entities that need to be part of that reconciliation, or excuse me, the audit process. We're going to formalize that in a letter and mail that to the campus. And then we're going to actually start the audit itself. And that's this entrance interview. That's where the auditor kind of gives the background information and tells you what's going to happen during the audit process. And then the field review is the auditor actually saying, yeah, school, can you please pull, for example, 10 records of your E2 transfer entitlement awardees, 10 records of your E1 students, 10 records of your E3s, that sort of thing. They're going to ask you to pull specific records at random that they can review and make sure that those were performed accurately. And then during that, usually this field review process can take a week to 10 days, where the auditor is going through all of those records that you've provided and verifying accuracy of the payments that were reported. After that, the exit interview will be scheduled where the auditor goes over the findings during this field review and explains what transpired and what happened. And then they will formalize all of their findings in this draft report, to which the school, if there are findings, is going to respond with, oh, this is what happened, and we've, taken these measures to ensure that this doesn't occur in the future. And then we'll finally close that out. And by the way, if you are wondering how your school is chosen for an audit, it's through risk factors and other types. It's a risk analysis, not risk factors. It's through risk analysis. So we take into account how new the school is, whether or not there has been another finding and when, sorry, another audit that was already performed and when, and if there were findings, what the findings were. Was there a huge monetary loss? So those types of things are, factored into that risk analysis that determines how often and with which frequency your school would be audited. Every campus at some point is going to be audited. Excuse me. It's just a matter of when. So some of the top audit findings you want to really pay attention to are that E2 transfer entitlement, right? That is when the student is transferring directly from a community college to a four-year school. And if you want to make sure, first of all, that they meet E2 eligibility, right? That Assembly Bill 840 that randomly selects 10% of those students for verification, right? That can come into play. But also there are early transfers. And we went over this yesterday in the various transfer scenarios. So if a student has been accepted to your campus through the early transfer program, that needs to be documented, and your auditor will look for that documentation. Making sure that the citizenship status is accurate for that DREAM Act applicant, right? So there are options, right? When a student completes that AB 540 affidavit within the CADA application, it's going to ask them a series of questions around their citizenship. It's going to ask if they're a U.S. citizen or green card holder, or AKA a permanent resident. It's going to ask if they are, I think, other types of Haitian, Cuban, entrants. Maybe it asks about parolees, but it's also going to ask, and the one a student with a DREAM Act application should indicate, is that they are neither an eligible citizen nor non-citizen. So that citizenship status needs to be indicated correctly if that student truly is a DREAM Act eligible applicant. EL being verified incorrectly, that's a pretty common one, or not verified at all. SAP not in compliance with Title IV. So recently in the 23-24 school year, later in the school year, or sorry, no, I stand corrected. It kicked in the 24-25 school year. Assembly Bill 789 rolled out, saying that the SAP policy for Cal Grant has to be not only in compliance with Title IV, but it cannot be any more strict or stringent than Title IV policies around pace and completion, right? That 150% of the attempted units, that sort of thing. That's got to be the minimum federal standards. In years past, we allowed schools to have more strict standards than what Title IV recommended or required, but now it's got to be in alignment with minimum federal standards around SAP for Cal Grant. Having no written policies and procedures, everything's got to be explained. Again, and your auditors will ask you to show you their policies. And if something looks like it might be incorrect, they're going to refer to your policy to make sure that as long as you're following your school policy and it's not in violation of, say, federal Title IV requirements, then you're going to be just fine as long as you're following your school's policies and procedures. And it's got to be written and documented. And if that is a student-facing policy, it should be also accessible to students. So it should be posted in the financial aid office. It should be posted on their school portals, basically making this very, very accessible and digestible to students. And then non-compliance with information security. So part of the responsibility of having access to all of this really private data for our students within Web Grants is that every student or every individual who has Web Grants access also has to safeguard that data vigilantly. And so your schools are going to have you perform this sign information security and confidentiality agreement, but they're also going to have you take information security training every year at renewal. So super important. And then also if a school has a departed employee and still has not removed their Web Grants access, that could be a finding. So FYI. All right, let's wrap this up and get us out of here for lunch. This is the last section, our resources section. So I think we've talked about this ad nauseum at this point, but listserv, listserv, listserv. This is how we notify all of our campuses what we're doing throughout the year. Legislative changes that came about, such as SB 7 or AB 789 that changed our SAP policy for Cal Grant to federal minimum standards. We announced that through these updates. System changes every night at 5 or every Friday night at 5 o'clock. We're going to shut down our system. So we'll usually announce that. Upcoming commission meetings, deadline reminders, right? You have colleges have a lot of reporting requirements around the graduation data and employment certification and verification, other types of annual reporting that need to be done. So we send deadline reminders before those are due. And then we also let you know about upcoming training opportunities and other programs that CSAC manages. So these are the types of trainings that we offer throughout the school year. Weekly live webinars, right? So as the school year progresses and different rosters open, different programs might be offered, we have different topics that we offer on a weekly basis, everything from Cal Grant 101 to EL verifications or year-end reconciliation, right? You're not going to learn everything in this training this week. It's really, Cal Grants are complicated, so it's really going to be doing your jobs that really are going to be the way to learn about Cal Grant programs. And if we thought middle class or Cal Grant was complicated, how about middle class scholarship? That's a really complicated program as well. But we also have annual trainings for both the high school segments that they are preparing their high school seniors to enter college, right? They're helping them file those financial aid applications. So we have training for high school counselors and anybody else working with high school students, as well as regional training, which you are attending today. This is session B of sessions A, B, and C, tomorrow being the last session. YouTube training videos. We've taken a lot of our full-length videos and just taken snippets of those to hone in on a specific process so that you don't have to sit through an hour-long webinar if you just want to know how to do something pretty quickly. We are getting ready to update these as well so that you have new and fresh information soon. Cash for College workshops and Train the Trainer workshops. Those go hand in hand because Cash for College workshops are the free workshops that our students and families can attend to get that application help, right? These are our high school students, and it could be renewing college students that need to submit this financial aid application every year, or for foster youth who want to submit a Chafee grant application. These Cash for College workshops bring together all the subject matter experts like high school counselors, like college, financial aid folks, CSAC staff under one roof, be it virtually or in person, to get those students and their families the help that they need. And the Train the Trainer workshops are something that all of you can take advantage of and attend so that you can get the tools that you need to then successfully host your own Cash for College workshop. Or maybe you just want to have the tools and the FAFSA training, DREAM Act training to know how to host your own financial aid night, whether or not it's attached to this branded Cash for College workshop format. And then ad hoc trainings. If you could benefit from having a CSAC trainer, either offer some training to your staff or perhaps to your students, shoot us an email here and we will send you a training request form. Right now, we are mostly just able to do virtual presentations because of our budget limitations that prevent us from traveling a whole lot. But definitely, if we could be of help, we'd like to assist you at your event. So we also have a newly revamped Cal Grant handbook. I'm so pleased to say that this is new and modern and fresh and easy to navigate to. In years past, it has not been that way. So take a look. It's available right here at that link. And then again, I mentioned that Cash for College and Trainer workshops. But if this is something that you're interested in partnering with us on so that you can host your own financial aid nights, take a look at the schedule and sign up for one of these upcoming workshops. And if you do participate to host one or more workshops, you will get this Train the Trainer certificate. We also have the social media toolkit so that you can advertise some of the programs offered on your campus, such as Chafee Grant for foster youth, letting every foster student know that might be attending your campus that they have immediate access to $5,000. It used to be that this would be depend on the student's unmet need. Foster youth or Chafee Grant now is an automatic award. It is not considered other aid. So every student who is part of the foster care system between the ages of 16 and 18 gets an automatic $5,000. Just encourage them to please apply. All right, so we also have a pretty robust social media presence now. That also wasn't always the case. We were always behind the times, but not only do we have, Instagram and Facebook, but we have a TikTok presence and we're on X as well. So if your families and students don't know what the Student Aid Commission is or what we do, point them to one of our social media handles so that they can get more information about the work we do. And then lastly, if you are attending all 3 sessions, A, B, and C, whether it's this week or any other previous sessions that were offered, C, of course, is coming up tomorrow of this week, send us an email to let us know that you have attended all 3 sessions, and we will verify your attendance and we will send you the certificate of achievement. So we want to recognize you for having spent all of these hours with us every day. Hopefully you've gotten some good information, but don't beat yourself up if you don't feel like a subject matter expert on everything Cal Grant. after this week because it is a complicated program. I've been with the commission for 12 years and every day I learn something new. So be kind to yourselves, but definitely shoot us an email if you'd like to get the certificate. And then I will leave you with a thank you. We so appreciate your time and even more so your service to our students. You are the reason our students are there. And whether or not you realize you make a difference, you do. We hear this from our students when we go out and outreach to them. So if you need some additional help, shoot us an email, send us, get us on the phone, however you need to reach us so that we can help you. All right, with that, we will call this a day.